If you're watching this right now, take a breath. Just pause for a second and feel this moment, because this isn't random. Out of millions of videos, you landed here. You didn't find this message. Something pulled you here, and deep down, you already feel it. That strange tension, that quiet shift inside you. Like something is about to change, but you can't explain how. You're not imagining it. Moments like this happen when your awareness starts waking up. And right now, something is aligning. So before you scroll, stay with me, because what you're about to hear might change everything. Have you noticed things repeating? Like the universe is trying to get your attention? Not in an obvious way, but in small, almost unexplainable moments. Like your emotions suddenly shifting for no clear reason. 1 minute, you feel completely fine, and the next, there's this wave of heaviness or restlessness that you can't quite place. It doesn't make sense. Nothing around you has changed, but something inside you feels different. And then there are the numbers. You look at the clock. 11:11. Later, 2:22. Then again, 3:33. At first, it feels like coincidence, but when it keeps happening, you start to wonder, why now? Why so often? And it's not just numbers, it's the memories. Old thoughts, old emotions, things you thought you had already moved on from, suddenly coming back, out of nowhere. Moments from your past replaying in your mind, not to hurt you, but almost like they're asking to be understood differently this time. And that's when it gets even stranger, because along with all this, there's a feeling you can't ignore, a quiet sense of disconnection, like you're present, but not fully here. Like the world around you feels slightly off or distant. You go through your normal routine, but something feels different. Almost like you're observing your own life from the outside. And it can be confusing, even uncomfortable, because you can't explain it to anyone. But at the same time, there's something else, something subtle, but powerful. Your intuition, that inner voice, getting louder. You start sensing things before they happen, picking up on energy, reading between the lines in conversations, feeling what people don't say. And it's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, but it's clear. And the more you notice it, the harder it becomes to ignore. Now here's the important part. Most people experience these signs, but they brush them off. They call it stress, overthinking, or just a phase. And sometimes it might be, but not always. Because moments like these often happen when your awareness is shifting, when your mind starts seeing things differently, when patterns you once ignored become impossible to overlook. It's not about something magical happening outside. It's about something changing inside you. Your perspective, your sensitivity, your understanding. And that change can feel uncomfortable at first, because growth rarely feels stable in the beginning. It feels confusing, uncertain, even a little overwhelming. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. In fact, it might mean you're paying attention for the first time. So if you've been feeling this lately, the mood swings, the repeating patterns, the resurfacing memories, the disconnection, and that quiet but powerful intuition, don't ignore it. Don't rush to label it. Just observe it. Because sometimes these small, unexplainable signs are not random at all. They're signals, not telling you exactly what will happen, but showing you that something within you is starting to change. And once you begin to notice that, you can't go back to seeing things the same way again. What you're experiencing right now might feel unusual, maybe even overwhelming at times. But here's something important to understand. Not everything that feels intense is random. Sometimes it's part of a natural shift, not a sudden magical event, but a gradual change in how you think, feel, and respond to the world around you. Every human being goes through phases of transformation, and sometimes they feel like chaos before clarity. Think about it. There are moments in life when everything feels stable, predictable, comfortable, and then suddenly, something shifts. Your thoughts become deeper. Your emotions feel stronger. Things that once made sense no longer do. This isn't necessarily something external happening to you. It's often something internal, something evolving within your awareness. Now, from a scientific perspective, the human brain is constantly adapting. It rewires itself based on experiences, emotions, and patterns. This process is often called change and adaptation. And during these periods, your perception of reality can shift. You start noticing details you once ignored. You question things you once accepted without thinking. And this can feel uncomfortable, because your mind is stepping out of its usual patterns. At the same time, there's also something known as collective emotional cycles. Humans are deeply connected through shared experiences, through social environments, through energy in a psychological sense. When large groups of people go through stress, change, or uncertainty, it can influence how individuals feel. Not in a mystical way, but in a very real emotional and mental way. You might pick up on tension, on shifts in behavior, on subtle changes in how people interact. And without realizing it, you start reflecting those changes internally. That's why sometimes you feel something, even when you can't trace it back to a specific event in your own life. And then comes the personal phase of change. Every person reaches moments where growth becomes unavoidable. It might be triggered by experiences, by realizations, or simply by time. Old habits stop feeling right. Old beliefs start to break, and you begin to question things on a deeper level. This can create a sense of instability, because your mind is trying to hold on to what feels familiar, while at the same time, moving towards something new. And that space in between often feels like confusion, like you're not who you used to be, but not yet who you're becoming. But here's where awareness comes in, because the moment you start noticing these patterns, you're no longer completely inside them. You begin to observe your thoughts. Instead of being controlled by them, you start recognizing your emotions, instead of reacting automatically. And that shift is powerful. Not because it guarantees instant change, but because it opens the door to it. Awareness doesn't force transformation. It allows it. Now, it's important to stay grounded here. This doesn't mean something extraordinary is guaranteed to happen in a fixed time. It doesn't mean everything will suddenly change overnight. Real transformation is usually subtle. It happens in small realizations, in quiet decisions, in moments where you choose to see things differently. And over time, those small shifts create something bigger. So what you're feeling right now, this mix of confusion, awareness, and emotional intensity, could simply be a sign that your mind is adjusting, that your perspective is expanding, that you're in a phase of transition. Not something to fear, and not something to blindly believe as something magical, but something to observe, to understand. Because when you approach it this way, you stay in control. You don't get lost in the feeling. You learn from it. And that is where real change begins. not outside of you, but within you. The next 48 hours might not look different on the outside. The world will move the same. People will go about their routines. Nothing dramatic may seem to happen. But inside, something could shift, because moments like these are often not about what changes around you. They're about what changes within you. The next 48 hours aren't about magic happening outside. They're about something waking up inside you. A decision point, a subtle moment, where you either notice what you've been feeling, or you ignore it again. And that choice matters more than it seems, because most people miss it. Not because it isn't there, but because it's quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't force your attention. It simply appears in small moments. A thought you can't ignore. A realization that suddenly feels clear. A feeling that says, something needs to change. And in that moment, you have a choice to listen or to scroll past it. Let me tell you something. There are two kinds of people in moments like this. The first feels the shift, notices the discomfort, senses that something is different, but they push it away. They distract themselves, tell themselves it's nothing, just stress, just overthinking. And slowly, that awareness fades. Days pass, weeks pass, and life continues exactly the same. But deep down, there's a quiet regret, a feeling that something was missed, that there was a moment where things could have changed, but it slipped away. And then there's the second person. They feel the same things, the same confusion, the same intensity, but instead of ignoring it, they pause. They pay attention. They don't try to explain everything immediately. They just observe. And in doing that, something shifts. Not instantly, not dramatically, but enough. Enough to make a different decision, to think differently, to respond differently. And that small change starts a chain reaction. Because transformation doesn't come from one big moment. It comes from small choices, made in moments that most people overlook. Now here's where the next 48 hours become important. Because when awareness is rising, timing matters, not in a predictive way, but in a psychological one. When your mind reaches a point of clarity, even briefly, it creates an opportunity, a window, and that window doesn't stay open forever. If you act on it, even in a small way, you move forward. If you ignore it, it slowly closes, and things return to normal. That's why right now, you might feel more aware than usual, more sensitive, more reflective, because your mind is offering you that window, that chance to see things differently, to break a pattern, to question something you've been avoiding. And again, this isn't about something guaranteed happening. It's about potential, about possibility, about recognizing a moment that could matter more than it seems. So in the next 48 hours, pay attention, not to everything around you, but to yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, your instincts. Because the shift you're waiting for might not come as a loud event. It might come as a quiet realization, a simple moment where something finally clicks. And when it does, you'll understand that this wasn't about time. It wasn't about waiting. It was about noticing and choosing. Because in the end, the people who experience change are not the ones who wait for something to happen. They're the ones who recognize the moment when it already has. So what do you actually do when you feel this shift? When everything inside you feels different, but nothing outside has changed yet? The answer isn't complicated, but it does require one thing: awareness. Sometimes, the biggest change doesn't come from doing more. It comes from finally paying attention. So here's what you need to do right now. First, slow down. Not everything needs an immediate reaction. Not every thought needs to turn into action. Give yourself a moment, because clarity doesn't come when you rush. It comes when you pause. Even a few minutes of stillness can show you more than hours of distraction. Second, observe your thoughts. Not every thought you have is true. Not every feeling needs to control your next move. Step back and watch what's happening in your mind. Are you reacting out of fear, out of habit? Or is there something deeper trying to guide you? The moment you start observing, you stop being controlled. Third, avoid negative decisions. This is important. When your emotions feel intense, it's easy to make choices you might regret later. So don't rush into anything. Don't react impulsively. Give yourself space, because the decisions you make in unclear moments can shape what comes next. Fourth, trust your instinct. Not the loud voice of fear, but the quiet one. The one that doesn't shout, but feels steady. That subtle feeling inside you that tells you what feels right, even if you can't explain why. You don't need to have all the answers. Sometimes, just trusting that inner sense is enough. And finally, write what you feel. This might sound simple, but it's powerful. Because when thoughts stay in your head, they feel overwhelming. But when you put them into words, they become clear. Write without filtering, without judging. Just let it out. You might be surprised at what you discover, because sometimes you already have the answers. You just haven't slowed down enough to hear them. Now remember, this isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's not about forcing change. It's about creating space for clarity to appear. So in this moment, don't try to control everything. Don't try to figure it all out at once. Just slow down. Observe. Be aware. Because the shift you're feeling doesn't need you to chase it. It needs you to notice it. And when you do, everything starts to make a little more sense. This moment, right now, isn't just another second in your day. It might feel small, quiet, almost unnoticeable. But moments like this often carry more weight than we realize. Because sometimes, change doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't come with a warning. It doesn't ask for your attention. It simply appears in a single realization. A shift in how you see things. A pause. That feels different from all the others. And this might be one of those moments. This moment, right now, might be the turning point you'll remember years from today. Not because something external changed, but because you did. Because you stopped. You listened. You paid attention when most people would have ignored it. And that alone is powerful. Think about it. How many times have you felt something and pushed it away? How many times have you ignored that inner voice just to stay comfortable? But not this time. This time, you stayed. You watched. You allowed yourself to feel instead of running from it. And that's where transformation begins. Not in big actions, not in dramatic changes, but in quiet awareness. In moments where you choose to see things differently. Because once you become aware, truly aware, you can't go back. You can't unsee what you've noticed. You can't ignore what you now understand. And that's not something to fear. That's something to embrace. Because growth doesn't mean everything becomes perfect. It means you become more conscious, more intentional, more in control of your direction. So whatever you've been feeling lately, the confusion, the intensity, the quiet pull towards something you can't fully explain, don't fight it. Don't suppress it. Just acknowledge it. Because it might be guiding you toward a version of yourself that you haven't fully stepped into yet. And yes, it might feel uncertain. It might feel uncomfortable. But that's often how real change begins. Not with clarity, but with a question. Not with certainty, but with awareness. So as this moment fades, and you move forward from here, don't forget this feeling. Don't ignore what you've realized. Carry it with you. Even in small ways, even in quiet decisions, because those small shifts are what shape your future. And one day, you might look back at this exact moment and realize this was the beginning. Trust this moment, because something in you already knows. This is the beginning.